When a sitting congressman starts listing the names of billionaires, royals, and powerful men linked to Jeffrey Epstein, and the FBI director sitting across from him goes silent, you know something bigger is being hidden. This wasn't a wild theory shouted online. It happened in Congress, on record, in front of cameras, and the reaction from those in power said more than words ever could. For years, the Epstein story has been buried under layers of secrecy, redactions, and ongoing investigations. But in this hearing, Congressman Thomas Massie did something almost no one else dared to do. He read the names out loud.
Entitled, What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections. The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief. And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice and FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
A banker, a royal prince, a Hollywood producer, a billionaire from Canada, even a rock star. These weren't rumors from tabloids. They came from official FBI documents known as FD 302's, statements taken directly from victims. Yet when Massie pressed the FBI director for answers, he didn't deny those names existed. He simply said, "I haven't personally read them." That's not transparency, that's deflection. And it raises a question that chills anyone paying attention: what happens when the people who hold the truth also have every reason to hide it? According to the victims who cooperated with the FBI, these files contain evidence of at least 20 powerful men Epstein trafficked victims to victims that included minors. Names like Jes Staley, the former CEO of Barclays Bank, appear in those documents. But beyond that, there are others whose identities are still sealed. 6 billionaires, a royal, a politician, a car company tycoon, and every one of them protected by the same wall of silence. When Massie asked, "Have you launched any investigations into these people?" the answer was a bureaucratic maze: multiple offices, multiple administrations, no credible information, no new indictments. The kind of response that sounds official but means absolutely nothing. Because the truth isn't lost, it's locked away. The FBI director kept repeating that phrase, no credible evidence. But who decides what's credible? The same system that's been protecting these names for decades. The same agencies that looked the other way when Epstein was given one of the most lenient deals in history. When the Justice Department couldn't find enough proof while victims begged to be heard. And here's where things get darker. One of the documents Massie entered into the record quoted former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, the man who helped negotiate Epstein's sweetheart plea deal. Acosta reportedly said he was told to leave it alone. Epstein belonged to intelligence. Think about that. A cabinet official admitting the case was untouchable because Epstein was tied to intelligence circles. If true, that means this wasn't just a criminal network, it was something much deeper, something that crossed into the world of covert operations and national security. The FBI director tried to sidestep that too. When asked if he had reviewed the CIA's Epstein file, he claimed he couldn't speak for another agency. But that's the point. These institutions protect one another. Everyone stays in their lane, and the truth stays buried. And when victims' names were accidentally released because the files were rushed to Congress for political reasons, no one apologized. The system that ignored them for years exposed them again, and still no accountability. Massie then turned to something chillingly symbolic. He asked whether the FBI director would meet personally with Epstein's victims. Not through staff, not through press releases, but face to face. The answer: more word games. The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information. That's not empathy. That's a deflection wrapped in bureaucracy. These aren't sources, they're survivors. By this point, Patel's answers had all followed the same pattern: polite, professional, and perfectly hollow. I haven't personally seen it, it's under review. Other offices have looked into it. Every response designed to sound cooperative while revealing nothing. But every time he avoided a question, he confirmed what millions already suspect: Epstein's power didn't die with him. It was transferred, piece by piece, into silence. The deeper question is why that silence still holds. Because if Epstein's network truly touched intelligence, finance, and government, then exposing the full truth could unravel more than just reputations, it could unravel institutions. That's why this moment in Congress matters. For once we saw power being confronted with its own hypocrisy, and instead of answers we saw fear disguised as formality. Think about it. The Epstein case spans decades, yet most of the names remain unknown. Files exist. Victims have spoken. Journalists have found connections between Epstein and former prime ministers, intelligence chiefs, and billionaires. Yet the official story never changes: no credible information. If that were true, why are so many of these people still fighting to keep the files sealed? The deeper you look, the more obvious the pattern becomes. The people with money and influence aren't just names in the documents, they're the ones who help make those documents disappear. They fund campaigns, control media narratives, and shape the institutions that decide which crimes are credible. Epstein's island may be gone, but the system that protected him still thrives. And here's the twist that most of the public misses: this isn't about conspiracy theories, it's about confirmed behaviors hidden behind legal language. Redacted pages, sealed court orders, national security exemptions. The tools that were supposed to protect the nation are now protecting its most powerful offenders. When Patel said he hadn't personally reviewed the files, that wasn't an oversight, it was plausible deniability. Because if he doesn't know, he can't be held accountable. It's a calculated shield. Every "I'll get back to you," every "I can't discuss ongoing investigations," is part of the same playbook that's been used for years to dodge responsibility. But Congressman Massie didn't let go. He reminded Patel that the FBI's own 302 its own internal reports named individuals who were never charged. He pushed Patel on why those files weren't investigated under the jurisdiction of New York, where the 2019 indictment originated, instead of Florida, where Epstein's immunity deal applied. And Patel's answer was stunning in its simplicity: those constraints only applied to the Southern District of Florida. Meaning, in plain language, there were no legal barriers stopping new investigations in New York. They just didn't happen. That's not incompetence, that's a choice. And when the system repeatedly chooses not to investigate the powerful, it tells you exactly who the system is designed to protect. Years ago, the Epstein story was supposed to end with his death. But every time new evidence surfaces, every time a name leaks or a file resurfaces, the same walls go up. And it always comes back to the same question: why does no one at the top ever face consequences? Maybe it's because exposure isn't just about one man, it's about a network that implicates too many. Maybe it's because justice in America works on two tracks, one for the powerful, and one for everyone else. Think about Virginia Roberts Giuffre, the survivor who helped bring this story into the light. Her courage was supposed to force transparency, yet even after she spoke out, after court settlements and media coverage, the same names she mentioned are still shielded. Some of those men continue to hold public influence, run corporations, and appear on world stages as if nothing happened. That's the real scandal. Not what Epstein did, we already know that, but what was allowed to continue long after he was gone. When Massie held up those documents, when he listed categories of men, royals, bankers, producers, it wasn't about speculation, it was a challenge to the system. If you already know, why haven't you acted? And that's why the exchange struck such a nerve. It wasn't just about a case, it was about exposing the hierarchy of accountability in America. Because the truth is, Epstein's world doesn't exist without protection. Someone had to ignore the flight logs. Someone had to approve the deals. Someone had to ensure that when victims came forward, their stories were quietly buried under no credible evidence. Every step of the way, the system chose silence, but silence has an expiration date, and moments like this hearing are cracks in that wall. When even members of Congress start demanding names on the record, it means the pressure is working. Still, it's not enough, because while hearings make headlines, justice requires action. Files need to be opened, redactions lifted, and those who enabled this network, whether in finance, politics, or intelligence, need to be held accountable. Otherwise, the message to every survivor is clear: justice depends on who hurt you. And that's why this story matters. Because the Epstein case isn't an isolated scandal, it's a mirror reflecting how deeply power protects itself. The question now is simple: how long will the truth stay buried? If you've watched this far, you're already part of the few who refuse to look away. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep digging when others stay silent, because truth doesn't surface on its own, it has to be dragged into the light. And if you believe in accountability, transparency, and real justice, then don't stop here. Subscribe and stay part of a community that refuses to let the powerful rewrite history. Like the video, share it, and help more people see what they're not supposed to. Because this story isn't over, and the next revelation might finally name the names they've spent decades hiding.